All right. I believe we are recording now. Uh, this is Kurt. This is the welcome video for English 2331, section 602 for fall of 2025. What I'm going to do is try not to bore you a whole lot in this video. I'm going to take you through basically the syllabus and how to navigate our Blackboard site a little bit. It it leaves a little bit to be desired because not to just bog you down with a bunch of stuff, but I'm pulled all the material over from the old version of Blackboard, which I've been using in one form or another for 20 years, and I had everything set up a certain way, and it didn't port over exactly as seamlessly as I would have liked, but I've been able to put a lot of that on the back end so you guys don't see it. And what you're going to see from your end is hopefully going to be a lot prettier and a lot more seamless. So I have not made everything visible quite yet for you guys. So if you, number one, if you jumped in early into the course, say like uh, Friday night or Saturday morning, and then you jumped in Saturday early afternoon, you saw something completely different. That's okay. It's being fixed, and I'm going to show you on my end what everything looks like as we go through this video. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to share my syllabus here for us, our syllabus for the course. So yeah, now you can see it. So our first assignment for the course, which incidentally is the census data assignment, basically, I'm going to ask you to submit our first discussion board post prior to uh, the 10th of September, because that is the, according to the university, the census date for us, meaning that you have to show some kind of like critical engagement with the course, meaning as an assignment submission of some sort. It's not um, generally it's not enough to just log in and view the material. You've got to actually submit something. So, and I have to report that by law. You know who's attending, who's not. So basically, you'll need to complete discussion board one in some form or fashion prior to prior to the 10th of September. It's the due date for it is set for the 6th, which all of that leads me to the following, which is that your first discussion board is going to be about syllabus reconnaissance study. So to go through the syllabus and basically post your questions about the syllabus on that discussion board. And then I or other folks in the class will come in and try to answer your questions, right? So and the reason I point this out is that going through this syllabus over the past couple of days and reorganizing Blackboard and so forth, I've noticed there are some potentially contradictory statements, some other things in here, and I'm curious as to what you will pick out and ask about. So I'm not going to necessarily point that stuff out to you too much. I'm going to see what you're able to kind of come across, and that I can clarify for you. Or that another student can clarify for you. But so as of right now, this is the Saturday before the semester starts, right? My student hours, otherwise known as office hours, are Monday, Wednesday, 3:30 to 5:30. That could change based on logistics, based on my transportation uh, needs and so forth. That this is in the office. If you want to connect with me via Zoom at that during that office hour, you can email me and I can send you a Zoom link. Um, Generally speaking, Tuesdays and Thursdays, unless I am in a meeting or have it, which actually is going to be quite a few, but not certainly not all day. Uh, but or if I have a doctor's appointment, something of that nature. Um, Generally speaking, I am during quote unquote work hours, um, you know, 9:30 to 4:35, whatever. I'm generally available via Zoom if you want to contact me uh, via email and say, hey, can you, I want to talk to you about my literary project, or I want to talk to you about, something about the course, whatever. I could send you a Zoom invite and you can connect with me that way. That's fine. I'm more than willing to do that. I'm even quote unquote after hours, especially for an asynchronous course. I'm willing to do that. So uh, yeah, so here's my Zoom virtual office code. You probably won't need that because I'll probably send you a link for that. But if you are on campus, you want to drop by. Basically, anytime my office door is open, you're more than willing to drop by. And I teach pretty consistently all day, Monday, Wednesday. However, I do have a lunch hour. So if my office is open during lunch, that lunch block, and you want to drop in and say hello, or you want to come by my office hours, whatever. If the door is open, you can come in, even if I have it basically shut. If it's even open like a brick, you can like knock on it and get my attention. I may, have my headphones on, you know, uh, focused on something, but you can definitely get my attention. So this course, you probably knew signing up for it, but it is asynchronous, meaning that we don't meet at any particular time. Your obligation, and indeed your how your attendance is calculated, right, is by submitting work on time. That being said, with the exception of the census assignment that I already told you about, discussion board one, um, you can turn in late work without penalty through week 14, which is Thanksgiving week. There's a lot of reasons for that. We live very complicated lives. When I've taught this course both in person and online many times here with Tamusa, and last summer I had students like in other countries, uh, visiting other countries for their either for school or for work or for family vacation, something like that. Uh, you know, um, um, so we run into issues, whatnot, right? But that that's not meant to say that I advocate for anybody to wait till the very end of the semester to turn everything in. I really don't like that. I don't want to see that. But if you run behind for whatever personal reason, um, you can submit your stuff um, without penalty up through week 14. Now, if you're trying to play super catch up in that, say it's like week 12 and you've only submitted like a couple of things, and you don't have any clue what you want to do for your project, so on and so it becomes problematic, right? Especially because in those last couple of weeks, uh, I don't accept late assignments, so I don't accept the late course retrospective, which in this semester I've kind of flipped a couple of things. This semester, your course retrospective is your final. I don't accept a revision of your project late either. So just to keep that in mind. So I'll just run through some of this stuff. Um, you can read, I mean, a lot of this is from the course description online, in the course catalog. My feeling is my thought is right that there was a statement that came out a couple days ago, last week, something, right, that said that reading people who read in America, or the practice of reading in America, has declined 40%, right, from the year 2000 to now. Okay, so that's really drastic. And if you look at people of color, that percentage is even higher. So my part of what I'm trying to help help you with here is reading practice, right? If you get into the habit of reading more and reading in a wider variety of material, maybe this course will expose you to some stuff that, or maybe even some genres of literature that you haven't really played around with, haven't really delved into. um, okay, and maybe you find something you like, and maybe you know a type of literature you like, or something to that effect, and you begin a reading practice, or you reinvigorate a reading practice. That's great. I mean, my thing is that I don't want you to leave this course hating literature, right? That's my bottom line. Okay. Okay. So another thing is that there's a lot on the syllabus, as we'll get to. There's a whole lot. It is not realistic, okay, for me to expect you to read everything. Okay, it's just not. Okay. The idea is to expose you to a lot of material, and let you kind of delve around in it. Okay. Um, Such that you have enough to, obviously, you need to read enough to be able to engage with the discussion forums meaningfully, right? You will have reading journals where I'm going to ask you to reflect upon the reading that you are doing, relative to the class, okay? And then you're going to have one project, okay, that you'll do, um, the literary project. And all of this, I mean, there's quite a few examples on Blackboard, as we'll see, and so on. But all of this is to get you engaged with the literature. But if you look here, so each reading journal, and there's a breakdown of this here. It's all the due dates here. There's a breakdown of this here. So you'll do um, you'll do 4 reading journals, 60 up to 60 points each. Uh, the reading journals um, are essentially qualitative, right? Um, if you turn in a 1-page reading journal that reflects upon what you've been reading relative to the course, you can bring in other material that you're reading as well, particularly if what you're reading in the course, or what you're experiencing with the course, if you're watching course videos and all and that, right? If this course is somehow influencing how you're reading in other contexts, you can certainly bring that into your reading journals, right? Um, but basically, you'll do 4 of those. You'll do 6 discussion forums. And we'll look at the discussion forums here in a minute when we go to the Blackboard site. But 2 ideas to keep in mind with the discussion forums. One is actually 3, because of the new setup of Blackboard. So the first is that Blackboard will not, because I ported the boards over, the discussion forums over from a previous iteration of Blackboard, it will not allow me to link the uh, discussion boards into the various weekly modules. Okay. All that means is that you'll have to go across the top and hit the discussion button on the weeks that you'll need to turn in a discussion board. Okay. The discussion board post. That's all that means. You can't, they're not linked directly in the modules, and I'll show you that. Secondly, is if you read the descriptions of the discussion board posts, with the exceptions of the first one, which is like I said, the syllabus reconnaissance, where you're going to ask me questions about the syllabus, right? And also there is one midway through the semester about, I think it's discussion board 4. It's about your literary project and generating ideas for your literary project, right? With the exceptions of those, you have choice. You've got a great deal of choice with how you respond and what you respond to, right? And it will say choose one of the following to respond to, right? So what that hopefully communicates to you is, although there's a whole lot on the syllabus, I, I'm not expecting you to master everything, right? I'm expecting you to be curious, right? And hopefully find some stuff that you vibe with one way or another. Okay. And then the other issue with the discussion board, the other aspect of the discussion board is in order to get full credit on the discussion boards, you must respond to somebody else as well, right? You must respond to somebody else's thread, right? Okay. So those concepts are key with that. The literary project. Um, so with the literary project, and we'll get more into this, right, as the semester kind of will really sort of begin to focus on the literary project uh, a lot, right? Basically week 8, 9 on, right? But the basic idea is that you want to engage in some way with one of the works from our syllabus, uh, such that you're helping your audience, your readers, what have you, engage with it in a new way, see it in a new way. Um, so I've had, and you'll see when you look at the examples of this, I've had students do all kinds of stuff. I've had students do traditional literary essays where they take a literary framework, right, like deconstruction or hero's journey or feminism, queer theory, whatever, and they, look at an aspect of a particular work or an incident within a particular work, a scene within a particular work, what have you, and they evaluate it through a particular lens, right? And let their audience know essentially why they should care, right? It's one thing to uh, talk about, point out, for example, I've had many students go with this. I usually don't bring this up directly, but a lot of students look at the Epic of Gilgamesh and go, are they, does their relationship, go beyond friendship in some way? And I was like, well, it's possible to read it that way. You can make that argument. Um, and then if the student pursues that line, right? Yeah, you're pursuing that, but why? Why should we care about it? What is that communicating to us, right? What is that? What are the implications thereof, right? So I'm asking for a little bit of depth in that regard. Okay. So, but anyway, students uh, can write essays, right, or the traditional literary essay. I've had students write songs. I've had students write poems. I've had students do podcasts. I've had students, uh, create comic books. I had one of the examples uh, in the sample literary projects that you'll have access to is a text-based computer game that a student did. I had a student do a diorama, right? An old school diorama with Warhammer miniatures based on Beowulf, right? So uh, there's a lot you can do, but the idea is to talk about how what it is that you're doing, how this artifact this that you're creating, how that is somehow an interpretation of an engagement with the work of literature that you're looking at, right? Again, we got quite a bit of time to delve into that. Okay, but basically, if you submit something for your initial draft, sorry about the air conditioner. As you can tell, my kitchen's behind me here. I'm over here on the west side, off of Petranco. Shout out to the west side. Anybody on the west side? Kitchen's behind me. I got my air vent in front of me. So if I'm hard to hear right now, I apologize. It's a necessity. So almost 100 degrees outside, which is actually cool for August, Texas. For those of you who are not native or who haven't lived here through a tail end of a Texas, South Texas summer. In any case, this is where it's actually cool outside. It's only like what does it say? It is 90 degrees. Woo! It's almost cold outside. Okay, but anyway, um, yeah. So if you turn in something that is shows me a trajectory, right? You may not have every part of your project done. You might, if particularly if you're doing a podcast or if you're doing a work of art or something, you may only have the initial concepts done. But if I can tell where you're going with it, right? That's what's important for the initial draft of the literary project, right? So that basically just by turning that in, you'll get your 100 points. The revised draft is up to 150 points. Basically, if you're writing an essay, you highlight your revisions. If you are creating your work of art, you submit your finished work of art. You also submit with that a reflective piece that that talks about how what it is that you created um, engages with or is an interpretation of the work of literature that you're working with, you're thinking of here. I had a brilliant piece last summer that was this actually just a couple months ago. It was a, a feminist interpretation, feminist reading of the first few chapters of Genesis. So, but anyway, uh, that's one example. And the student created this great, fantastic work of art. I am not a visual artist, right? So that's why I really appreciate it, right? I really appreciate visual art done well. Same thing with music. I'm not a musician, so I really appreciate it. Uh, okay. So, but yeah, and basically, you can opt out of revising your literary project, but you need to tell me why you are not revising it, right? You need to give me a rationale for that. If you fail to do that, then the most you can earn from your revision is 50 points. But most of the time, people are really good about including an addendum and letting me know, hey, I chose not to really revise because this is my concept and this is what I'm doing. I just want you to be able to defend your intellectual decisions, right? Your creative and intellectual decisions. Okay. Um, so I will say this: the materials are not going to be under course content in Blackboard. If you're looking at this video now, you know that the new Blackboard is not organized that way. It's much more straightforward. So you'll see when we go on to Blackboard here in a second. Um, all right. So here we have all the due dates for you, and again, these are on Blackboard. These are much more assignments and such are much more easily accessible than they used to be through the calendar function. Go through and look at that. But okay, so this is kind of important. Um, I do not accept Google Docs. Okay, you can compose in Google Docs. I don't know why you would, because every Tamusa student has free access to not free, you pay for it through your student fees, but you have as a Tamusa student Microsoft 365. So you don't necessarily need Google Docs. The reason that I don't accept Google Docs is because um, I would say 90% of the time, if not more, when somebody tries to link me a Google Doc or send me something, especially through Blackboard, I cannot open it. Okay. And what I tell students about um, material that you submit, if I cannot see it, it does not exist. Okay. If I, as your instructor, if I cannot evaluate it, right, to see, to engage with it and engage with your work, it does not exist. Okay. I have to be able to see it. Okay. So Google Docs is out. Okay. Now, what you can do in Google Docs is if you, for whatever reason, if all you know is Google Docs and you're not gonna, I respect that. I'm only using the new Blackboard because my university is essentially forcing us to, and the people that create Blackboard are forcing us to. I use the old one for 20 years. It was perfectly capable, perfectly, it's perfectly functional for me. But anyway, the point being is that if you are in Google Docs, you can export your Google Doc as a PDF and submit that and upload that PDF. The other thing is that SharePoints typically are problematic, and I know that if in high school, especially if you had those Chromebooks, they're trying to have you either submit everything as Google Doc or submit everything through SharePoint. The problem with SharePoints is that if you don't set those to everybody can edit, okay, before you send a link to it, I'm not gonna be able to get into it, right? My Microsoft stuff is, I've got several Microsoft accounts, right? And so I may or may not be able to access your SharePoint depending on where I am, depending on what device I have, et cetera, and so on. And again, if I cannot see it, it doesn't exist. Okay. So what you got to do is you got to create render a PDF from that Google Doc and upload that PDF and download that to some hard drive somewhere and then upload that PDF to Blackboard. And and I understand if you are, particularly if you're an early college, high school student, and you've been issued one of those stupid Chromebooks, and they are. The reason that your high school has them is that they are cheap, but they are not, as you're very quickly going to find out if you haven't already, because if you're in this class, you're at least an 11th grader. That for a lot of college work, they're not sufficient, right? So, yeah. So, but what you can do when you're on campus is you can go to one of the computer labs and you can render your PDF and then use a computer there to do that. Because again, I'm not going to be able to see your Google Doc. Okay. Also not going to be able to access your pages file, right? So if you're a Mac user, please render your pages file as a PDF and then upload that PDF to Blackboard. Okay. This says I don't accept SharePoint links unless the securities are removed. 9 times out of 10, folks don't know how to remove the securities properly, so I wouldn't even do it. Okay. And I had a young woman in my office, I believe it was in the spring, who did everything perfectly as far as removed her securities and stuff. And I sat there with her, and it still didn't work. Okay, so I don't know if it's an issue with the A&M system or or Blackboard or what, but it just download render your document as a PDF, download it to a hard drive, upload it to Blackboard. Okay. Um, in the case of your literary journals and stuff like that, you can type them in the spaces provided too. That's like literally copy the text and so on. All right, that's enough about file formats. That's boring as hell. We don't need to talk about that. Okay. So this says Blackboard Ultra expresses all grades as percentages. That's changed, so you will see point totals. Okay, which is much. There. This is important. Says I will not drop students for non-submission once a census roster is confirmed. Meaning, if you want to drop the class, you got to do it. You got to do it. Okay. So I'm more than willing to, sign those documents for you to help you do what you need to do, but you need to initiate that process. And it has been my department policy not to drop students during the census day process either. So, you're not going to be dropped unless the registrar drops you, or unless for non-payment, or unless you initiate the drop yourself. Okay, unless there's some drastic change in policy. Um, Please check your Tamusa issued email address on I would do it at least twice a day, right? Um, Not just for this course, but for the sake of all your courses. Um, I have Outlook on my phone. Every time I get a Tamusa related email, that Outlook beeps. My personal email doesn't beep, the Outlook beeps. Okay. Um, and so I would recommend, if you can, Outlook on your phone be with your Tamusa info. Um, because that's how, the majority of your professors are going to be communicating with you, is via university email. Also, make sure that your emails from Blackboard itself are not going to your uh, clutter folder, okay, in your Outlook, in your student email, because a lot of professors, including myself, will send out um, weekly or bi-weekly announcements and things like that, and that, you need to see, right? um I mean, for a lot of you, I'm quote unquote preaching to the choir, because most of you, if you're in this course, you're sophomores or juniors, right? Probably, maybe a few, maybe a couple seniors, a few seniors. I had a couple. I've had folks that this is the very last course that they like waited to take, and they have already they've already gone across the stage, and so on. So, but anyway, um, I don't check Blackboard messages. Why? Because Blackboard does not beep when I have a message. You could put a message in there, I not see it for 2 months. Okay, that doesn't do anybody any good. I check my email. Again, my email, cmeyer@tamusa.edu. Okay. All right. I really don't like all this housekeeping stuff. I have already told you you can submit late work up until November 29th, which is the end of Thanksgiving week. Uh, so this talks a little bit about discussion board posts. Um, you should write your discussion board posts in um, cohesive paragraphs, right? Um, it's not necessary. I'm not, there are not necessarily right or wrong answers. Just, you all, essentially justifying your points of view on the materials, etc. Please, like I said, respond to a colleague's post. Um, so, and this is clarified on the assignment description itself in Blackboard, uh, but um, really, this iteration of this says um, that the reading journals can address material not of the course. While that's true, if you're going to do that, please do it in reference to the course material. Like I said, if you're reading something and you were inspired to read it because of something that you ran across in the course, that's cool. You can talk about that. Or if you're talking about your general reading practice that has somehow been enhanced by the course, you can talk about that, and so on. Right. But um what I've had people basically do is to slough off reading the course material, right? And, well, like I said, I don't expect you to read everything. That would just be cruel and unusual, and so on. I do expect you to engage regularly with the course materials, and I want to know. I mean, the reading journals. I want to know how you're engaging with the course material, right? Like how you're thinking through the course material as you're reading. Okay, so your literary project, and there's a more detailed iteration of this on the actual assignment submission page for this that you'll see in Blackboard. But basically, you know, 3 to 5 page essay or a creative project. In either case, I'm going to ask you for your source, either your works consulted or your works cited, etc., and so on. At the end of the course, the last thing you'll do during finals week or by finals week, you're more than welcome to submit it as early as Thanksgiving week if you want, is the course retrospective. That's basically what I'm asking you to do is look back at the highs and lows and so on of the course as a whole. I take that very seriously. Uh, I have um, so I this course I haven't significantly revised, but the face-to-face version because I hadn't taught the face-to-face version probably in 2 years, something like that. And I significantly so I'm about to teach it face to face uh, beginning on Monday, right? So I have spent the last 2 weeks significantly revising not necessarily the content, but the delivery of the face to face version based on a lot of feedback. So I do, I take the course retrospective uh, fairly uh, fairly seriously, right? Okay. Um, so AI, right? Everybody, we are in the AI moment right now, right? So everybody's concerned about AI. Uh, you can use it to help you generate ideas and so forth. I think it's unrealistic to expect that people aren't going to use it. You should cite it. You should mention that you have used it. Um, you should not use AI to create whatever your final product may be. Okay. So, it's not, that has not been so much of an issue the way that this course is designed, as opposed to a couple other courses that I teach, where, it's fairly obvious when students may be engaging with AI and uh, not citing it. I, I haven't necessarily run into it here. But note that you can use it to help generate ideas and so forth. You can certainly use it, like if you're, um, oh, if you just can't come up with the right word for something, or that sort of thing as part of your composition process, you can certainly engage with AI like that. Um, you know, there is such a thing as using AI to generate. It's very controversial. As such a thing as using AI to generate art. I have a buddy of mine that is a professional artist. He uses AI and has gotten a lot of flack for it. But the fact of the matter is, to use AI the way that he does, it takes hours and hours and hours. He puts a lot of effort into it. So, again, not a strict ban on AI, but be transparent about how you're using it. And ultimately, I want your ideas, right, to be reflected in whatever that you submit for evaluation for the class. But how you get there, like on the back end, like if you're asking AI for ideas, things like that, that's okay, right? Um, Community agreement, basically, um, we live in, as the Chinese curse says, interesting times, right? So folks um, are in this moment very polarized. politically, socially, in many ways, and so on. But the fact of the matter is, we may in some ways disagree with one another, but we gotta work together, right? That's what society is. Society is folks coming together for the greater good, for the greater benefit of the whole. And as a classroom community, that's what I hope that we can do, and we can respect one another, and everybody can get something out of the material, you know. And like I said, I'm well, I haven't said this, but my role, right, is not to indoctrinate you to think a certain way, um, or anything like that, or to traumatize you by way of the material that I'm asking you to look at, anything of that nature. As a matter of fact, the definition, right, of education, or a definition, if you will, a very compelling one, right? Very compelling concept is that um, education doesn't occur without, in other words, me speaking to you is not the process of education, right? The process of education occurs internally, right? When you make a decision based on material that you've heard, right? So when you've weighed all of the possibilities and internally you say, I'm going to go with this, right? That is education, right? So the idea is not just in this course, but across your courses. The idea is that you develop the tools and the practice by which you can think critically, such that you can evaluate different possibilities, a wide range of possibilities, and then be informed and based upon that information, and based upon the criteria that you critically uh, um, um, discern, right, and design. You can make a decision, say, okay, this is the way I want to go. This is the stance I want to take, right? That's education, and it's very much an internal, right? And that's also, I mean, by now, you're, like I said, you're sophomores, juniors, seniors, right? The term liberal arts education does not mean politically liberal. I hope somebody has told you that, right? That's, I mean, depending on whose voices are prominent around you, you've probably heard the opposite. Oh, liberal arts, it means, oh, it's a bunch of liberals. Not necessarily, right? Because the term liberal arts, the term liberal in the phrase liberal arts, in the term liberal arts, is has to do with the uh considering of multiple possibilities, multiple sources, multiple points of view, right? It doesn't mean that you necessarily have to accept every point of view uh, to which you're exposed, but it means that what you do ultimately, hopefully, is hold those points of view in suspension and evaluate this, and imbibe those points of view and evaluate them, roll them around in your cognizance, if you will, and then you figure out, okay, I'll go here, you know. And so, what I have a problem with is restricting information, right? Restricting access to information, restricting access to art, literature, and so forth, because um, one would and have, and we're going to see in the literature that we look at, that one very compelling argument throughout the centuries has been that one really is not fully human until one begins to inquire about the big questions, right? Why am I here? What is my purpose? Who am I, right? Who are you? Ultimately, who is big G God, right? Those are the big human questions, right? And there's some of the stuff that we'll be looking at because we're gonna be looking at a lot of literature that is very foundational in the sense that it continues to influence us in various ways, you know, thousands of years in some cases after it's been composed, right? So we're going to go from, uh, well, depending on who you talk to, we're going to go 5,000 years, 5,000 years, uh, uh, 5,000 years back to essentially 20 years back. Okay, that's the breadth of time that we're going to cover in this course, and we're gonna go around the world. Okay, we're going to start with the ancient Near East, and then we're going to end with the contemporary Near East or Middle East. Essentially ancient. Start with ancient Iraq, end with 20th century Iraq. Okay, so and then several points in between, obviously, right? Um, okay, this material here you've seen. This is all of our services. Please, if you have a documented disability and you have not registered for with the Office of Disability Accommodations, please do so. And remember that you have to re-up every semester. Okay. So your support letters do not carry over from semester to semester. You need to re-up those. Okay. The other thing that the other resource I should point out is the Writing Language and Digital Composing Center. Even if you are a fully remote student, right, you can still engage with the Writing Language and Digital Composing Center. You can actually send them a draft of your work and they can, comment on it, send it back to you, right? Um, without having to come to campus and so on. You can do a virtual meeting with them if need be. They have their own system. It's not Zoom. It's something else. But in any case, there's that. All right. I'm just gonna scroll down. I'm not gonna I'm gonna let you all read this if you don't know about that. Um, the holidays don't necessarily affect us so much because we're asynchronous. Just so that you know, if you do take classes on campus, if nobody's mentioned to you, there's no class on September 1st. All right. So, as I said, this week you'll do your syllabus reconnaissance. Due by the end of week 2 will be your discussion board 1, which is essentially based on your syllabus reconnaissance. Please do that before then. Okay, I gave you basically 2 weeks on that to catch any stragglers, right? Okay. Uh, then we'll begin with the Epic of Gilgamesh, um, as well as some selections from Genesis. And I don't know if I'll have to look again. This is uh, there's some wonky stuff because of pulling over from the Blackboard. But really, as far as Genesis, I had indicated, I don't know if it transferred over, but really to look at the first 3 chapters of Genesis, which are pretty much they're pretty iconic. And there's also very controversial in some ways, and then to look at the uh, Abraham narrative, because really, I mean, focus. There's a lot of focus on usually on Noah. There's a lot of focus on Jacob and so forth. But Abraham's got there's some interesting stuff in there. And again, if you want to do your project on Genesis or you want to do your reading notes there, you can talk about sort of the work as a whole or different aspects of the work. Interesting, but and again, the reason that I'm including the book of Genesis is because it's the biblical texts are texts that can again continue to as we can see, right, just by turning on the radio for 3 minutes, somebody's going to make some biblical reference, whether it's to whatever end, right? So, but I encourage you to look at the text as literature and not necessarily as sort of look at the text first as literature, um, and sort of suspend any theological framework that you may have, um, uh, and see what you how you encounter the text. Um, there's a huge tradition uh, that goes back about 200 years or more, but looking at the text and how the text is put together, and so on. And some of the claims that the text makes are perhaps suspect. I don't know. I I'm not going to argue matters of faith, right, with somebody, because you can't. I mean, you can present evidence in certain ways, but um, if someone has a particular faith, that's their faith, right? So I'm not about that, but uh, again, one of the most influential texts out there, and Epic of Gilgamesh is as old, if not older, than the Genesis. It's older than the compiled text of Genesis that we have now. So of course, the narratives in Genesis are as old as Gilgamesh. Some of them are as old as Gilgamesh, etc. Right? So we're talking about stuff from roughly the same period, um, and a lot of parallels in some ways. Um, and in some ways, Genesis is a reaction to, a deconstruction of, in some ways, some of the ideas put forth in in something like Gilgamesh. Particularly if and this has been done a lot, right? But if you compare the flood narrative in Gilgamesh with the flood narrative in Genesis, right? Clearly, they're uh, from a common origin, but they're different. There are a lot of subtleties, right, that are different, right? And so a lot of it has been talked about that. And again, um, it's not only important that those differences exist, but why? What are the differences telling us, right? Potentially. Okay. Um, all right. So we're moving on. Ramayana and Bhagavad Gita. So we're gonna spend in Mahabharata. We're gonna spend 2 weeks basically in ancient India because these works, well, for various reasons, sociopolitically, India is hot right now, right? There's and Bollywood, whatever, but these works, um, just like the biblical text, right? They continue to really influence people's lives, and decisions that they make, and how they see the world, and so on. Uh, and so we'll take a look at these, and if you've never looked at the Ramayana, if you've never looked at the Bhagavad Gita and the Mahabharata, then I think you'll be pretty, at the very least, entertained. And there's some really important and compelling philosophical concepts in there that you don't necessarily have to be a practitioner, I should say, of Sanatana Dharma uh, to appreciate, right? That also find their way into Christianity and beyond, right? So uh, we'll look at the Odyssey. This used to be a text that everybody read in middle school. It is not the case, and that's not the case anymore. A lot of folks, unless you're my age, uh, and I was born when Gerald Ford was president, so do the math there. Uh, but uh, but unless you're my age, right? You did you, you know you didn't cover the Odyssey, even in high school, right? So we're going to look at the Odyssey. If you take mythology later on, or if you have taken mythology with Dr. Santos, you'll probably get that again. You'll probably get to see more than one opportunity to look at something like the Odyssey. Um, we're also going to look at Luke. I chose the Gospel of Luke. I've done the Gospel of John before. The reason I chose Luke Acts is because it's there are two distinct works, but they're written presumably by the same author, and they cover not only the ministry of Jesus but also the years following. So this is sort of the groundwork of Christianity. And again, this is important literarily because it's because these works continue to influence folks, and not only sociopolitically and spiritually, but also literarily too. In Europe, and Shakespeare did not use the King James Bible. King James Bible came after Shakespeare. He used the Wycliffe's Bible, but it's probably a moot point because probably about 75% of Wycliffe ended up in like whole cloth in King James. But anyway, the Bible is sort of the lingua franca, like for 1,000 years, I guess, the Bible or more. The Bible was basically the common text that folks could reference, and that's not the case anymore. And I don't think that's a bad thing, necessarily. There's more that not that not there's anything wrong with the Bible. I'm not saying that at all, but I don't think it necessarily says anything about one's moral character, or spiritual reality, what have you, whether or not one reads the Bible. Because as we know, there's historically the Bible's been used to justify stuff that's amazing and stuff that is abhorrent, right? The Bible was used for 100 years in the United States to more longer than that if you go before the United States was the United States, but to justify slavery, right? And then Harriet Beecher Stowe came along and said, "Nah, nah, you guys cannot be Christian and own slaves, and here's why." Right. That's the whole purpose of Uncle Tom's Cabin, was to show that the New Testament, in particular, um, uh, does not allow for followers of Jesus to to be cruel, wantonly cruel like that, right? So, I mean, that was Harriet Beecher Stowe. I'm not, that's, and but a lot of people bought that argument, right? A lot of people bought that argument. Abraham Lincoln credited her for the ultimately what led to the Civil War, the rise in abolitionism, the popularity of abolition. She kind of brought it from a very sort of very intellectual place to something that was accessible to the populace, and then led to the election of Abraham Lincoln, which ultimately led to the Civil War. And the Civil War was about slavery, right? I mean, they if you read the Articles of Secession, I should say, they name, right, the states that left the Union to form the Confederacy, name slavery as the reason, right? That's you know. So anyway, but I'll let our wonderful history faculty take that up. I have co-taught history courses here, so I do have some credibility as far as that goes. Um, uh, as far as 19th and 20th and 21st century American history. But yeah, the reason that we're looking at um, the Gospels is because, or in this case, Luke, but I mean, if you want to bring in, that's fine. The reason we're looking at it is because, again, it's first and foremost literature, whether or not it's based in truth or based in something sacred, etc., that's up for the individual to decide. But it's literature, right, that continues to influence folks, right? Continues to influence people's lives. I know that this video is going on and on forever. Bear with me, okay? Uh, then we'll move forward. We'll look at Journey to the West. We'll look at Beowulf. Beowulf's fun, right? If you are a Tolkien person, if you are ever played D&D, that's sort of the Beowulf is it. Beowulf, you'll dig Beowulf. Um, and it's interesting, again, how the story conveys the values of the society that he's in. But we'll touch on all that later. I'm trying to speed this up. Journey to the West. Um, Basically, Journey to the West is the precursor to Dragon Ball. So Akira Toriyama took Journey to the West, Sun Wukong, main character, right? And he combined him with Superman, and you get Son Goku, right? That's as simple as that. Okay, and of course Toriyama takes Goku and develops him into his own character, his own narratives and so the Dragon Ball would not have lasted as long as it has if all they did was um, was essentially riff off of Journey to the West. They went beyond that, but it's started right. The genesis of Dragon Ball, if you will, is Journey to the West. Journey to the West is I find first of all it's hilarious, but also it's kind of comforting because the idea is that if this monkey that pees and poops on everything and all the if this monkey and these other beings that he's traveling around with, right, if they can ultimately become enlightened, right, so can we, right? There's hope for us, right? Because I mean, at least we're not, we may be exceptionally flawed people, but we're not like pooping and peeing on everything, at least not on a regular basis. So 1001 Nights, again, this work really just had a tremendous impact when it hit the West, if you will, in the 19th century. It goes back much further than that. But interesting. We'll delve into that. The protagonist is a woman, and she does some pretty remarkable stuff in the story, especially given the state of women at that time, right? And all cultures at that time, really. But we also, have an optional dive into the Quran, again, because the Quran is a work that continues to influence our society. There's a whole lot of discussion about um, the fact that if in certain parts of America right now, if one has a traditional quote unquote um, religious inclination, it's likely to be Muslim, right? In a lot of areas of the country, that's where it is, and I'm not commenting on that positively or negatively. It's a fact. Um, just like when if you look at um, uh, the fastest growing Christian denominations, one of the fastest growing is a Latter-day Saint. Again, not commenting positively or negatively. It's just and I almost put the Book of Mormon on here. I have not done that yet, but there is an argument. There is an argument out there that the Book of Mormon, whether or not one takes it to be sacred or even takes it to be well written, there is an argument out there that says the Book of Mormon is the first great American novel. Um, um, and that's in quotes, great American novel. That's like a cliche, but anyway. So, but yeah, you what I'm trying to say is you cannot, just like one cannot deny the prominence of Mormonism, or I should say LDS, Latter Day Saint, in our society, right? Because and they have the influence is great, right, in our political system, and so on, right? One cannot deny the prominence of Islam uh, in the current moment. So anyway, then we move into some really awesome stuff, in my opinion. The Watchmen, which totally turns the superhero genre on its head, written by British genius Alan Moore, about and deconstructing and critiquing a very American genre, which is comic books, superhero comic books in particular, extremely American genre. Um, got some golden and silver age comics. Mouse 1 and 2. Mouse is, in my opinion, it's one of the most evocative and important works of literature I've ever read. Extremely important. It is a graphic novel, right? But don't let that fool you. It's really any. I've never had a student look at Mouse and not come away moved by it. Okay. Um, that's not to say you have to read it though. You could say, well, I just don't feel comfortable with this. I don't want to tackle this. That's okay. There are other works of literature on here, but um, it's here, right? It's available to you, and the experience, So Love and Rockets, Love and Rockets is the probably the longest running comic series uh, done by Latinx creators, right? So the Hernandez brothers have been doing Love and Rockets since like 1980, right? And that's what we're going to look at. We're going to look at the early. We're going to look at the early Love and Rockets. It's very much, when you look at it, if you're familiar with flash tattoo art, right? It's very much in that vein. The art, it looks like flash tattoo, and it's very much Latinx, and it's very much punk. It's got a very punk sensibility about it. Now I tell students it's Latinx California, not Latinx South Texas, right? So there is a difference. Even though there is that difference, you will probably be able to recognize. You probably able to sense where they're coming from on some stuff. And it's got some magical realism in it, uh, and so on, which they in later books they move away from. But in the first book, uh, you've got the characters like encountering aliens, dinosaurs, and all this kind of stuff. And, you know, okay. Anyway, um, so your literary project first draft is going to be due week 12. Um, well, you'll still have one work of literature after that. So I do again, and I've got a link to the film right now for Persepolis. The original French version with English subtitles is free on YouTube right now as of the filming of this video. So I have that available for us. Um, Thanksgiving week, all late work is due Thanksgiving week, right? So no late work, please, after Thanksgiving week. Um, and then after the week we come back, we have the last day of class, the end of the semester is December 4th, right? So that period of time, right? If you need to conference with me about your literary project revision and stuff like that, I'll be available to do that, and I'll have a sign up for you and all that at that point. Final exams, basically, you turn in your course retrospective by December 10th, and you're all good. And again, if we look back up here, we've got again, I'm sorry about if the air vent is making me hard to hear, but we go back up here, it shows you the great breakdown of your grades. Basically, try to keep up with your submissions and stuff as much as you can, as consistently as you can, because you don't. I don't know. Some of you, I mean, I'm just amazed at the number of courses that some of you take, particularly if you're taking an asynchronous course, the number of courses that you take. Some of you are working full time. Some of you are working full time, taking courses and have children. Some of you are in the military. Some of you are high school students, and I don't take that lightly. Like, I've had in course retrospectives, students, high school students write about like, oh yeah, I have like all these courses and I have X, Y, and Z sports, so right. So what I'm trying to say is don't let yourself get bogged down by a bunch of stuff that you got to do last minute because for one, if you're doing it for this class, you're doing it for your other classes too, more or less. More than likely, I should say. So just be just be just be careful, be mindful of the due dates. And we're about to take you into Blackboard. Um, and uh, and I'll take you around Blackboard just a little bit. Okay. So I'm going to stop share. Get to see my blur here, my uh, my face here, and where we're going to go, and I'm going to go into Blackboard. Okay. So again, your Blackboard doesn't quite look like this yet. A lot of this stuff is still hidden. I'm going to get that taken care of this afternoon. But you've got your welcome video start here. So that's where this video is going to be. Okay. Week 1, it's got a link to our syllabus. We just went over the syllabus. Week 2, click on it, right? Has all the stuff for Epic of Gilgamesh and lots of different theoretical frame. And I'll just show you like in the folders for the works. This is a really nice, professionally done, um, paid for by National Endowment, paid for by Cooperation for Public Broadcasting. Introduction to Gilgamesh, and a lot of these introductions were paid for that way, and they're out there for instructors to use. So, okay, here's my video on the Epic of Gilgamesh, right? So it's me droning on for 45 minutes or whatever about Gilgamesh. Spark Notes, the audio book, and then where is yeah, this is the this should be the Seamus Heaney Gilgamesh, is it? Yes. Oh, Stephen Mitchell. Stephen Mitchell. Yeah, the Stephen Mitchell version of the Gilgamesh is the standard, right? So when I was in college in the mid 90s, right? Epic of Gilgamesh was the book that students did not sell back, right? Of all the books that they kept, right, from their core, right, core courses, Epic of Gilgamesh was among the top. So, okay. Um, right. And then, so basically the folders work like that. I do want to show you. So again, I said that you can't link, it would not allow me to link the discussions into the weekly folders. So to get to the discussions, you click discussions and they're here, right? So you would click on them, and you're not going to see anybody's responses until you respond yourself. Okay. And then another new feature, right? Another new feature was actually, you can just click over. I'll just show you. So here's and then you would type in here and it would create a post. It has the due date and so on, how many points it's worth, so on and so forth, right? Okay. Another newer feature, right? For a newer feature for this new version of Blackboard that they call Ultra, right? If you click on calendar, right? Click on calendar, you can go over to so where it says due dates. Click on due dates, all your due dates in order of that they're due show up, right? So for like December 6th, you can click on discussion board. There it is, right? You can click on reading journal one the next week. There it is, right? Okay. So, all right. Um, okay. I think if you are um at the end of this video and you're still with me, that's an accomplishment. Um, so congratulations, and I hope we have a great semester. I hope to get to know you. Email me with any questions that you may have. I look forward to your syllabus reconnaissance. Again, discussion board one, due September the 6th. You are more than welcome to submit that before that. And again, remember that you do need to comment on somebody else's posts as well as on all the discussion boards. All right. Okay, I probably left something out, so I'll be reaching out to you uh later on for clarification and such. Okay. All right. Thanks everybody.